everyone, thank you for joining. I'm really excited to show you how to draw a blue tit, a beautiful blue tit. So one of the birds that hopefully you'll be seeing in your garden soon. Lorna and I were talking about it, and she said she hadn't seen any, and then on our pre-call she actually saw one, which is really exciting. But I know up in Scotland you've had a bit of wind, so if you are there and you're looking out for birds, then don't be disheartened, they'll be on their way. Just maybe when the weather's calmed down a little bit. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on this lovely reference image that I printed off, and we're going to look at basic shapes. So when I go about drawing animals or any subject, I look at basic shapes and then move on to a little bit of texture. You might be able to see here in my example. So basic shapes here, adding a bit of texture and background, outlines, and then going on to the color. You don't have to add color, of course. With the blue tits, they are striking, they're lovely blue and yellows, a little bit of green as well. I've also got a little bit of moss and sticks in its beak here because this is a female getting ready to make her nest for the spring. So that's what our theme is today. So what we'll do, we'll start off by, I'll remove this at the end as well. If anyone needs, I'll take a picture of this and I can email it to Lorna, I can email it to you. I'll put my contact details in at the end. So if you need to contact me for any of the prep work, then please let me know and I'm happy to send that to you. Okay, so we're going to start off, and I'll keep the reference image here on the screen so you can see what we're doing, and you can do this with me. First of all, just going to be using a simple pencil. I've got a 2B pencil. At this stage, you want to be pressing slightly lighter with your pencil. So then if you want to rub out some of the lines that you don't need, it makes it easier to rub out. I'll be pressing a little bit harder than I usually would, just so you can see that on your screen. Okay, so we'll start off with the basic shape of the head, which is this lovely circle. So basic shape of a circle here, and I'm getting it quite high up on my page because I know that the body is going to be coming down a little bit further. So I've just popped it here. Don't feel worried if it's maybe not exactly the same shape as the reference image. This is a stage where we're kind of working out and mapping out the shapes, so then we can alter them as we go. So there we go, I've got the circle. Now what the stage I'll do next is actually so I can get proportions right. And with the head on my reference image, I'm going to measure how many heads go into the body of the blue tit. So I'm kind of grabbing the reference image there, and I can see that that circle fits into the body about one time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer it from here, and I'm going to go about there, and I'm going to mark it so I know that my next shape of the body isn't going to go under that mark. And that will just give you the proportion, so you're not ending up with a blue tit with a really big head and a tiny body, or vice versa. So now what I'm going to do is draw this kind of lovely circle here that's quite rotund. Again, for width, you can do the same with the head. So I'm going to kind of pinch the head there, and I can see that it's about 1.5 heads lengthways. So if you want to get your proportions right for the length as well, you're getting the head and you're kind of twisting it so it starts about here. Again, it's kind of a bit of a guesstimation. So that's one head, and then about half is about here. So I'm going to just make another little mark there, so I know that it's not going to go any further than this. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw a nice big round circle. Usually when I draw the birds, they become a lot more rotund than the actual reference picture. I seem to just quite like a rounder animal. A lot of my animals, when I'm drawing, start off looking a bit like a potato or a selection of potatoes, but that's fine too. So there we go, we've got that circle there, and then we're looking at this shape for the wing. So this wing is kind of divided into three or two, but for the purpose of mapping out the shapes, we're going to draw this shape, which looks a little bit like a leaf. or a teardrop shape. So it's slightly straighter here. It's got a little bit of a ridge, but that's okay. We can add that in later. So I'm just looking for that basic shape that comes out slightly past the body, up around into the head. So it's going to fit about here. And then it's going to come out just past the body shape that we've drawn. I'm going to then add this section in. So just measuring the wing. Yes, the wing is almost about the same size as that tail. So you wanting to be bringing the tail out about here. Hopefully those proportion marks make sense. It's just a nice way of starting off with one shape and then being able to map out the body with the others. Great. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to draw is their lovely feet. They've got quite, hopefully you can see, I might bring that a bit closer. They've got quite long claws. And for this stage, we are just simply going to draw a line, a little circle to show where the joint would be. And then we've got about 3 claws coming up onto the branch about here. Again, a little bit of artistic license is allowed. If it doesn't look exactly like a reference image, that's absolutely fine. I always say that in terms of artwork, if you want to make it perfect, you just take a picture. It's nice to have a bit of a style when you're doing artwork. And then this one, you've got another of the toes coming out here, another one here, and one is kind of just tucked underneath that branch. And you can draw your branch line in too, so it gives our bird a little bit of grounding and makes the picture make sense. So there we go. A lot of people say, oh, I can't draw, Laura, all I can do is stick animals or stick people. That's where it starts. You're kind of making a basic skeleton and then you're going to build up over it. Great, so let's get some features going. So we're going to now focus on these features here, the face. Now, what I find really helpful when I'm drawing an animal that might be looking to the side or even face on is to create what I call a face cross. So we're looking at the line that runs central to the face. At this point, it's looking to the side. So the central point will be following that circle round. So it won't be midway, but it will be kind of following it round where the beak will be sitting. And then there's this other cross that goes pretty much in the center of the circle, and that goes through the beak, through the eye, to the back of the head. Just bringing back my little reference images, my working out images here, you'll see that this line protrudes kind of up. I've drawn it up and around. You can get rid of this. We're not going to, you don't have to have it all the way out, but just to show you what I've done, I've kind of followed it round, and then the line almost kind of comes around the chest as well, but you can add 2 different ones. And then this face line here, it will be central, but then there's another central one too, which maps out where the eye is going to go. And so we'll start to draw that in now. So looking carefully at the image, what we're going to do is kind of add, you can elongate it out just to help you with the motion, and it's coming out about, I would say, 3/4 of the way in to that that circle. So you're just putting it around the face here. And again, these are all mapping out. It feels a shame, but we will be getting rid of these lines. It's just to help you map out how to go about drawing them. And it's an easy method I've found that really helps. And then we're looking at the circle here to add the eye line and the beak. I am going to protrude this one, and it's about halfway across the face shape that we drew, going up slightly towards the end. And then halfway through that that circle, so all the way down the middle, again with a slight curve to the direction that the blue tit is looking. We have this line which will help us suggest where the eye is. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that eye in. They've got quite nice big eyes, nice and beady. That goes in about there. Your beak is going to be a lovely triangle. So it starts off just above that eye, eye line here, measuring to see where it goes, comes out of the face. Again, it is a little bit more rounded, but we can work into that in a moment. Goes round and then kind of comes back in again, almost to produce this kind of smile almost. I know birds don't smile, but I can't help but give them a bit of character in my drawings. So then you've got your, it's almost like a squashed diamond. So you've got your triangle and then a smaller triangle going the opposite way. And this line is helping you to guide you where to go to connect where the eye line would be. And then it goes to the back of the head. And then going to add a line that goes through the chest. So it's this kind of line that again is not central to this circle, but it's central to where that that mid section of the bird is, and it's kind of where those breast muscles would be here. If you can imagine what's underneath. You don't have to draw these in, but I find it sometimes quite helpful to help me to guide where the feathers are going to be going to. Great, so we've got our basic shapes. We're now going to add an outline to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the shapes that I've created, but I'm going to do a broken line with my pencil to suggest that it's not completely flat. You do have those little lovely feathers. So you can have a little play around on your page if you want to see the best way of doing it. I kind of create a bit of a flick and I move around the bird from the top all the way down, because that is pretty much the direction of those feathers. So when drawing the feathers in, I will be moving my pencil around the shape. So I'm going to start off with the top here, and we'll go back to the face here. And I can see that actually instead of a roundish circle, there's almost like a bit of a dip down. So this is where you want to be kind of figuring out, or don't want to say perfecting because it doesn't have to be perfect, but kind of figuring out those actual shapes. So you've got your guidelines, and then we're bringing the neck to connect to that wing. The wing is slightly more, what's the word, kind of wavy here on this reference image as it's folding down the back. So it's almost in 3 sections and it comes to a point. And then going to start to come into that wing slightly, but we can come back to that. And then the tail feathers come out quite nice and sharp. And then when we get down to the body, the feathers are coming out more from the body. So I'm going to now go down with my pencil strokes. I'm pressing slightly harder than when I was doing my mapping out, just so that the lines that I want to keep rather than getting rid of when I rub them out, sorry, will stay on the page a bit better. So I can see that there's actually this little connection here on the leg. So I'm going to start to kind of bring round, which I think looks a little bit like it's wearing a tiny pair of shorts. So that's the way I have in my mind visualized it, and then that can get that kind of shape there where it hooks around the leg, and it's the leg's going to be sticking in. We'll come back to those legs in a moment. I'm then going to start from the top of the head and go down that breastbone on breast round here. And I can see that actually instead of it being rounded, it does come in a bit more. So I'm going to rectify that by just bringing my line, my final line in past that line that I've got. So if you are thinking, oh, that line looks a bit big, or that circle looks a bit big, then that's absolutely fine, because what you can do is, this is the stage where you're like, yeah, that doesn't look in proportion, and you can trim it out if you like. There we go. So that's looking more like the actual structure. Let me just move this in so you can see. There we go. And then this little area here is probably the hardest of the lines to get, because it's so subtle. It's kind of just where you might be able to see the eye on the opposite side of the face, there's a tiny little marking of an eye, but there's this kind of dent that goes in. So I'm going to concentrate on that, and what it's going to be doing is pretty much almost going around that circle, but then just at the last moment before we get to the beak, it kind of curves in. You have that lovely kind of what looks a bit like a brow bone here. And then I'm going to press slightly harder on my beak, so make sure it's a little bit rounder. This beak is really tough, perfect for seeds and things like that. Nuts, you often would find them if you've got like a bird feeder with I think they're called a peanut bird feeder. Blue tits love to get their beaks in there and get those seeds and nuts out. So I'm pressing slightly harder there, and I'm doing a thick line, unlike the kind of feathered line that I was creating, because that beak is nice and sturdy. The key is, if you're drawing something soft, if the texture's soft, kind of draw softly, and if it's something that's thicker and more dense, then draw a little bit harder, and that usually helps you with texture. Anyway, so let's get into the feathers that are kind of connecting to the beak. So I'm going to just draw a few little feathers around it, and then we're going to get this line here. So from the beak down to where the head meets the body, there's not much of a neck there, but it kind of goes into the body. So we're going to bring it out here, and then past that, the body line, and then it's almost a bit squarish, and you can mark that again with a broken line to suggest that's where the feathers are. And then this section goes into that wing, so I can see that actually this wing is maybe a bit too high here, so that's fine, I can rub those lines out. And then for the wing, I'm going to concentrate on the section. So we've got this lovely grey area here, and I'm going to just draw in slightly again with some broken lines to suggest where that colour is, and that will help when you start to add colour. There's some of the feathers coming out from the body into the wing here. There's a divide that is on this midsection of the wing, and to create the suggestion of the wing feathers, they're a bit thicker than the body feathers, I'm going to draw a few lines like this. So it's almost like an elongated tiled roof. So draw the lines and add some curves to the end, and that will suggest that there are wing feathers there. And you can do the same to this bottom section, but they're slightly more close together. So don't worry about getting too caught up in the amount of feathers, or the amount of feathers that are going to be on your wing. What's nice is just to have that kind of suggestion, and then as you're adding color, you can add a bit more depth to it. Brilliant. So let's just mark in up here where that those darker bits of face markings are. So it's almost like it's got a really elongated eyeliner makeup on. It kind of maps around there, or kind of a little mask, and then you've got this almost triangular section that connects from the beak down to the bottom of the face there. And all that these are doing are pretty much helping you map out where the colors are going to go, but along with that, it helps you to rectify if anything's in the wrong shape. So I can see here actually this face shape needs to go down a little bit more. Okay, hopefully your shapes are now looking like a bird. And we're gonna just bulk out these legs as well. So very simply, these legs are going to be slightly thicker than the line that we drew before. I'm going to scoop around that joint. I'm going to make, hopefully you can see this, like a little kind of insert. I'm going to make this really big here so you can see what I've done. So imagine that's the leg and these are the claws. So what I've just done there is I've gone round this joint bone connection and then done a little divot like this. So what that is the leg that then is connected to this very impressive long claw. But I'm doing that on a slightly smaller scale. They've got lovely petite little feet. So I'm going to do that. They look quite, when you start to focus on the feet and start to draw them, they look quite dinosaur-like. So I'm going to do that. And these claws, they are basically just two lines that are coming together like this. And then once you add color, you can add a bit of tone and suggest that it's shinier by coloring them in and leaving a little bit of a gap, as if the light is shining on them. There we go. Okay. So we're now at the point where we can rub out the lines that we don't need, and I'm going to give you a few tips on adding color. And then when we get into the coloring side, if anyone has any questions about anything, please pop them in the chat box. Lorna will read them out, or if you want to, you can voice them. So it feels a bit sad. Actually, before we go any further, does anyone want me to go over anything before we move on to the colouring side of things? Or is everyone okay? Everyone's okay? Perfect. Lovely. So I'm going to start to rub out. Sorry if my camera shakes a little bit. I'm going to try and do this nice and gently. So I'm going to rub out these lines that we don't need. And it feels like such a shame because we've spent so much time mapping out this bird, but what's really rewarding is that once you get rid of these lines and you just leave your outline, and don't worry if you accidentally rub out some of the lines that you do want to keep, because you can go over them, unless you've got the best rubber in the world, there still will be a little trace of the lines that you've made. So I'm going to just rub them out, getting rid of these lines on the edge that I didn't need. Not worrying too much about the lines in the feet, actually, because we're going to be colouring them in black and grey, so they will blend in with our pencil anyway. Okay, just going to get some of those lines out of those wings, and hopefully what you will have revealed is the structure of the blue tit. Apologies again if there's a bit of a wobble on the camera. So hopefully you're left with a lovely outline, and sometimes you don't even have to go any further than this. Sometimes I quite like just the outline. There we go. So let's get some colour in. I'll give you a few moments to be rubbing out because I don't want you rushing and then rubbing the whole thing. So we're going to look at a few different textures and techniques if you're using coloured pencils. You can also do it if you haven't got colours and you just want to add some texture. Let me demonstrate that on the darker shades that we've got here. Say we want you to add this darker texture into the centre. What I'm going to do, something that's quite useful, is seeing how far your pencil can go, basically. And this is the technique I'll be using with my coloured pencils too. So I'm pressing really hard, and then as I'm going across the page, I'm loosening my grip slightly. And I can see that this is the range of tone that I can create with that pencil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very basic, using my pencil kind of on the side, not pressing too hard. I'm probably pressing about this mid pressure. And I'm going to just colour in that kind of section that's in the, if you've got a black pencil that you want to add this to your drawing, then that's absolutely fine. I just want to show you that you can also create tone and texture with just a pencil. So I'm just kind of doing an overall shade on the side like this. It kind of goes down to the bottom of the just before the bottom of the bird. It's about there. Maybe I've elongated it too much. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work in to that section, and I'm going to press pretty much down to this harder tone. and I'm going to flick it out a bit like we were doing with the outline. I'm going to flick it around and create these kind of feathered textures. Again, you don't have to draw the whole feather in, that would take a long time, but it's just this lovely suggestion that that shading there is actually the feathers and not just a darker area. So I'm working on top of what I've already created, just to give you a little bit of an example on a bigger stage. And feel free to do this as well. These working outs are quite nice to inform you of what you're doing. Oh, let me just move that up to there. So you can see that I'm kind of using different tones to create this texture. And then if I was to do the eye, I'd be doing a similar thing, but I'm going to be pressing quite hard and I'm rotating. So I'm moving the same way as what I'm drawing is kind of moving, if that makes sense. So the eye is round, so I'm moving my pencil round, getting to a point where I'm leaving this kind of light spot to give a little bit more depth and character, and the contrast between the light and dark there really makes that eye pop out of the page. Okay, so let's move on to color. So blending techniques and color. What I'll do is I'll do a little bit of the yellow, a little bit of the blue, and then we'll whilst we're colouring in, I'm conscious of the time. We have got some, if you've got any questions about how to go about teaching or drawing or anything about blue tits, I've got a few little bits of information that I can give you as well. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm doing like an overall shading with this yellow here, and I'm kind of moving in a circular way. I don't know if you can see that. I'm kind of moving circular. And the reason I'm doing that is because that's creating a softer texture than if I was just going up and down, because the feathers on the bird here in this section are nice and fluffy and soft. On the wing, I'll probably be going downwards. So again, moving with the shape of the subject. Okay, so we're kind of bringing it down here into that darker area. And then you can, with the same pencil, go into it a little bit more with pressing harder. Might not be able to see that. Oh, you can see that on camera. That's great. So yeah, I'm pressing a little bit harder. I'm kind of moving my pencil back and forth to suggest that the feathers aren't just one way, they are a bit more free than that. But I'm also going to add a slight, if you have got a darker colour, so I'm adding a slightly darker yellow just to give that idea that there's a bit of depth there. So the more you layer up, the more colours you add in, the kind of more texture and depth you're going to get, but with very simplistic methods of blending. There's also a little bit of grey here around the side where the light is absent. So I'm going to just work in very lightly with some black. If you've got grey, then that's great too. You can use grey. Very, very slightly, pressing really lightly, because you don't need too much to suggest that there's darker area. And I'm also going to add a little bit of green as well. We can't really see the green in the feathers, but it will just add a little bit of extra depth to those darker areas here. And then I'm going to add the black in again where we were colouring in before. Lovely. Perfect. So that's kind of the yellow stage, and as you're going around the bird, if you're getting to the bit where it's white, you can use your black again to just suggest a few little feathers, moving the way that the feathers are going. But you don't have to do too much on this white section at all, because the paper will show that it's white as well. So I'm just going to show you a little bit here. So that's what I was doing before. I was kind of working down, adding a few bits of the blue as well, and leaving some of the white to suggest that it's white. For the different textures. So again, for these wings, they've got that beautiful striking blue. So I'm going to go in with a slightly lighter blue, first of all. With pencils, it's quite nice to go for lighter first. It'd be the same if you were doing watercolors as well, an overall lighter color, which means you can then add the tone darker. If you're using something like oil paints, it would be the reverse, darker and then adding light on top. So I've done that overall kind of sketch there, and then in these folds where the feathers are overlapping, I'm just adding a darker blue, or again you can press slightly harder with that lighter blue that you were just using, and that creates some lovely depth and lovely tone, and shows that there's like a fold in the wing rather than it being flat. You can do that again with the head, so mapping out the kind of the crown, that lovely white crown. Keep looking at your reference image to see where it ends and where it begins. Again, I'm using those kind of that same method of moving around the subject, moving around the shape that is on the head. There we go. I'm going to work in again with the same color. I'm going to just press a little bit harder, but I'm moving down the head, suggest that the feathers are flat on the face, or on the head, sorry. I'm going to add a little bit of the darker one as well. And actually, even in the blacker areas, there's kind of a tinge of blue, so you can accent it with that blue. You can add the blue first for these darker areas, and then work into it with the darker black to make it pop a little bit more. So just use your reference image and see where these different colors are popping out. And for the beak, I'm going to press really hard with my black pencil, but I'm going to leave a middle section quite light and not colored in at all. And that will suggest the light there that's hitting on that beak. I might go over the line just to show that there's the fold in the beak as well. Okay, so maybe if anyone has any questions, this is a good time to do it. We might not finish the colouring in at this session, but hopefully I've given you enough tools to then go ahead and finish them. Laura, is it okay to just allow people to speak out if they want to, or?
Yeah, you can voice your questions or raise your hand or put them in the chat.
So if anyone has any questions. Everyone seems nice and happy, great. Just interrupt me whilst I'm talking as well if you do have any questions. Let me tell you a little bit about blue tits whilst we're colouring in. That's always quite nice to know whilst we're colouring and adding texture. So blue tits are actually one of the most popular garden birds in the UK. The British blue tits, there's a few different species. There's the Eurasian blue tit, which will migrate and will come and go. But the British blue tit, which the one we are drawing at the moment, they actually they stay in the UK. They don't go very far from where they hatch out of their little eggs. Oh, Hugh, you're so welcome. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. Yeah, they don't go very far at all. At this stage, so going into February, March, the female will be gathering bits and bobs for her nest, hence why I add a little bit of moss and twigs into my drawing before, my reference image that I was showing. Yes, and she'll pretty much make her nest without the help of a male. These little birds are quite independent, where some birds will help each other out, where the female will stay around the nest area, The males will help them, but blue tits, the female will be the one who will be independently making that nest. And they'll use things they can find in the garden, so moss, a few twigs, but they'll also make it nice and soft in the center with feathers and any kind of like fur they find on the floor. Someone once told me that if you want to help birds out, I don't know if this is true, but I have a lot of hair, as you might be able to see. But when I brush my hair and I have a clump of hair that comes out, if you just put it outside, then the birds can use it for their nest. There we go. Good way to help the birds out. Like I said, if you want to attract things like blue tits, putting something out like a peanut feeder. They love the seeds, so their diet, as I mentioned, are mostly seeds and nuts. But interestingly, when their chicks hatch, mum will fly quite a distance to find things like moth larvae and caterpillars, which are nice and fatty to help the chicks grow up nice and strong. So she'll go and find them for them. Here I'm just adding a little bit more texture. I get really into this. I hope you're finding this quite mindful as well. When I could get to the drawing side of things, I feel like I'm losing my train of thought a little bit. But yeah, so I'm just overlaying, I'm going over with the dark to give this kind of little like neck ring here. Pressing slightly harder as the darker areas, as I get to the darker areas, and then going around the eye with that lovely eyeliner. It's not eyeliner, face marking. And I'm going to just add a few little bits of texture here with my darker pencil to suggest that there are feathers on the face and it's not just a flat section. There's a little bit of grey here, which sometimes looks a bit green too. So you can add a little bit of green too. Have fun with the colouring in. This is nice. Once you've done all that work with the mapping out and all the structure, it's quite nice to have a little bit of play around, a bit of artistic license. See what your pencils can do, see what your colourings can do. Have sections on the side if you need to experiment first. Yeah, so it's when I feel the most relaxed, I think, drawing. Takes my mind off everything else, which is lovely. And then if you're drawing and looking out the window and you can see a bird too, that's just perfect. Brilliant. So we're coming up to about 5 minutes left, Lorna, now. Goes so quick, doesn't it? So yeah, any last questions, feel free to add them in. But what I do find quite nice when I've done these sessions before is I like to invite people to show their pictures. So if you would like to, no matter what stage you're at, even if you haven't finished colouring them in yet. Oh, let me one little top tip as well for the feet. If you get into the feet, when you colour them in, basically it's just a kind of overall tone like I was doing before, like this. But what you want to do is add some kind of texture like this. So you're doing almost like a little ring around each of them, and that just suggests that they're a bit more leathery than the textures that we've been doing before. So that would be my top tip for the legs. You can kind of see maybe it pops out a bit. Lovely. Okay, so yeah, if everyone is feeling okay to, if you want to pop your cameras on, remember we are recording a session, so feel free not to do so. But what I'm going to do is quickly put on gallery view. Hopefully, can everyone see the gallery view there? If you want to hold up your drawings, it would be lovely to see them. Let's have a look. Oh, these are beautiful. Yeah, wonderful. They are looking great. Oh, I hope you've enjoyed it. Give me a little thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Oh, there was a cat in the corner there. Lovely. They are beautiful. It's really lovely to see what people have created, because even though we're drawing the same subject matter, everyone has got a different style. It also reassures me that me talking is actually helping as well. So thank you very much. Thank you.